In this video series, we're going to look at the Burp Suite extension Hackverter. Hackverter is developed by Portswigger's own Gareth Hayes, and it's one of the extensions that I keep enabled pretty much all of the time because of the versatility that it brings to various different testing scenarios that you're likely to encounter against real live web applications. Now, I had previously assumed because of how useful Hackverter is that there would be lots of documentation and probably lots of video tutorials outside of this, so there wouldn't be a need for me to make tutorials for Hackverter. As I encountered various edge cases and had to solve certain challenges in using Hackverter, I realized there's actually not a lot of tutorials out there for it, and there's also, along with a lot of Portswigger and Portswigger adjacent tools, not really documentation. So I thought it would be worthwhile to create a video series, and this video is the introduction to that series. Now, to go along with the series, one thing I did was I took the code from Hackverter and I opened that up within a language model integrated IDE to produce just some rough documentation that I'll probably continue to edit and improve as I go. I'm going to link that obviously in these videos. It's available now on GitHub if you want to take a look. As I mentioned, largely LLM derived, but nevertheless, I reviewed and edited a lot of the content. And as far as I can tell, it's already more comprehensive than any other written documentation for Hackverter and its various features. Hackverter, of course, is available in the BAP store directly within Burp. I was actually surprised to see that it is the 15th most popular extension. I actually would have thought that it would be more popular, at least considering how frequently I use it and how frequently I recommend it for various different test cases. Once you have it installed, you're going to notice a few ways to interface with the tool. The first one is the tab that pops open. We're not going to play with that in this video. You also have some configuration available in the drop-down menu at the top. And finally, you also have the right-click context menu. So if I right-click within a request here in Repeater and I go down to extensions, we can see that we have Hackverter available here with all of its many options. And for this introduction video, I'm just going to show a very basic use case. And importantly for this series, I'm not going to go through a lot of the simple base cases. I'm going to focus on more of the practical uses of the tools as well as some of the challenges that you might encounter. So this first demonstration will, I think, be the most straightforward. For other basic use cases, there is some documentation and there are some tutorials out there that are available that you can look up. I'll try to link some as part of these videos. In this case, let's say we have a very simple situation where, of course, we're looking at Portswigger's Gin and Juice Shop. This isn't an existing page. Of course, you can see we're getting a 404 not found. I'm just using this request as an example for the purposes of this tutorial. Let's say we have a situation where on the client side within the browser takes a username that we submit for some type of action, and it base64 encodes that, and then when it inserts that into the request body, we also have it URL encoded. So we have this equal sign, right? That with that normally would be, or sorry, yeah, it is an encoded equal sign, but here it's URL encoded, so we get the %3D, and then of course we have the rest of the base64 encoded content. Now, if we are performing some type of attack, let's say we're trying to try to inject into something, try to see if we can produce syntax errors of some kind, or maybe because it's a username in this case, maybe we're doing username guessing for some purpose. Typically what you would have to do if you're to manually test this is you decode this and then you encode it manually again. And you can do that all within the right-click context menu within Repeater. Of course, it's very cumbersome, right? You have to convert it. We're going to have to, URL decode it first, then we have to base64 decode it, then we make our modifications, and then we go through that process over again. Now, not too long ago, Portswigger introduced into Burp this inspector tool on the right-hand side, and that can actually do this it can do this testing task for you as well. You can see that we have our selected text highlighted here, and it does automatically detect these simple encodings. So it decodes it to this test user string, which is our underlying value that's encoded here. And we can, apply some edits. I can click edit, I can click apply changes, and it will apply our changes directly within Repeater. But a few things about this tool, that's also kind of cumbersome to do, especially clicking apply changes. It doesn't have many encoding options. It's often unable to automatically detect them. Honestly, in my opinion, the inspector tool kind of sucks, and I wish it wasn't in Burp. I wish it would stop popping up in my face. It's terrible. I never use it. So we're going to ignore that completely, and I'm just going to show you the way that we can accomplish this using Hackvertor directly. So remember, URL encoded, base64 encoded, and then URL encoded. So reversing that, we're going to URL decode, so we get that equal sign. And then what we'll do, whoops, I'm going to triple click that just so we get the full value. And then I'm going to base64 decode that. And so, of course, if I sent this request now, assuming the server is expecting something that is base64 encoded, it's not going to correctly process this. So we can't just edit this directly. So what I'm going to do is insert some Hackvertor tags, which is how Hackvertor operates. It uses a series of tags that it processes during the chain of events that occur from you initiating an access to send a request and that request actually being sent from Burp. So I'm going to go to the extensions, right-click context menu into Hackvertor, and the first thing I'm going to do is encode this with base64. There we go, and then I'll select this whole thing, and just in case, in many cases when you find URL encoded content within the body of post requests, it's usually fine to keep that decoded, but just to show you the way that we can nest tags, I'm going to go to the URL encoding, and I'm going to URL encode it, which is somewhere. Here it is, down at the bottom. So what happens here is we have our data, which is first base64 encoded, and then it has a URL encoding applied. And so that should be received at the server with all of the correct encoding that the application expects. And now we can simply just edit the raw data, this test user here, right? I can have test user and then insert like a single quote to test for, classic SQL injection or other injection vulnerabilities. I can do all kinds of things. I can send this to intruder. And if I run this intruder, that will, I can set a payload position and send payloads in here, and those will be encoded. There are a few important caveats to keep in mind. One thing that I found was interesting is that the Hackvertor tools are actually not available directly within the right-click context menu in Intruder. I believe Gareth Hayes mentioned that this was a limitation of the Montoya API in Burp. So unfortunately, we can't edit our tags any further. If you're doing an intruder attack with Hackvertor, you want to start that in repeater, get your tags in, send that request to intruder, and then you can manipulate it there. But of course, we have our test case set up here, so that's no problem. Another thing that you'll encounter that can be challenging is you won't see your output immediately. So whatever this is encoded to, we're not going to see that. And that's not super useful in our case. But in some cases, depending on what you're doing, you actually might be very curious to know what was actually sent. Let's say you have a tag that's doing some type of fuzzing, for example, and you caused a condition that you'd like to investigate. Well, you'd like to know what that value was that you ultimately sent to the application. So if I click send on this, we send a request, of course, to a page that doesn't exist. So again, we're not using the application as it's designed. The request is just for example purposes. But you can see that we don't see what that value is. There are many ways that we can inspect that. The easiest way is just to go to Logger because we can see the history of our requests in Burp as they go out to our target applications. And if I look in the request here, we see that we have our encoded payload. So this is the base64 encoded payload that Hackvertor created for us to send to the application. Now, you can do the same thing with Intruder if you're logging your traffic to Logger. There are a few edge cases you might encounter where you want to do something a little bit different in order to be able to actually audit your traffic, and I'll explore those in future videos. But those are the essentials of Hackvertor. Install it via the BAP store, set some tags, send the requests. It really is as easy as that to open up all kinds of very useful functionality, especially when you're dealing with more complex encoding schemes, something that isn't available with the inspector tool or whatever tooling you're using. And especially cases where you need to do something a little bit custom. Of course, I'll have videos on creating and using custom tags as well in this series.